All right, welcome to this explainer. Today we're diving straight into something that honestly sounds like it's pulled right out of a sci-fi novel. We are deconstructing how exactly one single person can build a billion-dollar company. Because as you're going to see, the traditional rules of economic physics, they've completely changed. Historically, generating massive wealth meant you needed armies of human labor, right? Sprawling factories, massive corporate campuses. But to understand where we're actually headed, we have to look back at a massive watershed moment in 2012. Facebook acquired Instagram for an unbelievable $1 billion. But the true shock wasn't the price tag. It was that Instagram had exactly 13 employees. That is roughly $77 million in value per employee. And just 2 years later, WhatsApp sold for $19 billion with a headcount of just 55. The trajectory was officially set.
So if you take that historical curve, the unbelievable mathematical leverage we get from software, global distribution, and now artificial intelligence, and you extrapolate it to its absolute limit, you arrive at a very definitive endpoint. Exactly one person running a billion-dollar entity, the solo unicorn. Now, a few years ago, it used to be pure hyperbole to imagine a single human being managing a billion-dollar valuation or pulling in $1 billion in annual revenue without any traditional employees. But with the rapid convergence of AI and autonomous agents, this shifting from theoretical math into an impending economic reality.
To really put this into perspective, think about the exponential leap in valuation per employee over the last century. Back in the 1920s, Ford Motor Company needed over 100,000 laborers just to physically assemble and distribute their goods. Skip to IBM in the 90s, they needed about 300,000. But as progress marches on down to Meta, Instagram, and WhatsApp, the employee count literally plummets while the valuation just skyrockets. So the theoretical limit at the very end of that trend, it's an infinite ratio. $1 billion in value driven by one single employee.
Section 1. The Zero-Friction Economic Engine.
So, how on earth do you build an engine of this magnitude without entire HR departments and layers of middle managers? Well, traditional businesses have always relied on something called Coase's theorem. Way back in 1937, economist Ronald Coase basically asked, why do companies even exist in the first place? Why not just contract out every single task? And his answer was transaction costs. Finding vendors, negotiating contracts, managing communication, it just took way too much time and money. Firms emerged because it was simply cheaper to hire people full-time and build a hierarchy. But today, AI and API ecosystems have driven those external transaction costs to basically zero. You don't need a massive accounting division when software does the whole shebang instantly. And as those costs evaporate, the boundary of the firm shrinks all the way down to a single point, the solitary founder.
And here's a real game changer. This solo model completely bypasses what economists call the principal agent problem. Normally, an owner hires employees, but let's be real. Employees have their own divergent interests, right? They want higher pay, they want to advance their own careers. That natural friction birthed the entire industry of corporate middle management just to keep everyone pulling in the same direction. In stark contrast, a synthetic workforce of AI agents operates with absolute alignment. They don't want equity, they don't need health benefits, they just execute deterministic directives perfectly. So the solo founder retains total strategic control without the massive drag of monitoring a human workforce.
This complete decoupling of revenue from human headcount is the mathematical engine that actually drives the solo unicorn. There's a famous economic model called the Cobb-Douglas production function, which historically models economic output by balancing physical capital and human labor. But in the paradigm of the AI-driven solo enterprise, that human labor coefficient essentially hits zero. Meanwhile, total factor productivity, which is now driven by infinite digital replication and AI synthesis, approaches infinity. Because digital products have zero marginal costs, the cost to serve your very first customer is identical to serving your millionth. Every new dollar drops directly to the bottom line as pure profit. To actually achieve this kind of massive output, our solitary founder utilizes a highly specific synthetic tech stack. They aren't really acting like a traditional CEO, it's more like they're an apex orchestrator, conducting this invisible robotic orchestra. Large language models and autonomous coding agents can ingest super complex requirements and spit out production-ready code continuously. Serverless cloud platforms automatically handle load balancing if there's a massive spike in traffic. And global API infrastructures take care of everything else, from processing payments via Stripe to handling global tax compliance and even physical logistics. The founder just waves the baton, and the specialized network nodes handle the physical execution.
Now, this setup also beautifully solves the other half of the equation, which is distribution. You no longer need these sprawling global sales forces. This dynamic is modeled by Metcalfe's law, which basically states that the value of a network squares with the number of its connected users. Thanks to organic virality on modern social platforms, a solo founder can plug directly into algorithmic feeds and reach billions of consumers instantly. They capture exponential value without ever having to hire a single marketer.
Let's move on to Section 2, Blueprints of a Unicorn.
What's really fascinating here is that this isn't just some fun academic exercise. The blueprints are already being actively tested out in the real world. According to the sources, there are 3 main archetypes emerging right now. First, you have the AI micro SaaS wrapper, which solves high-value enterprise bottlenecks for premium recurring fees. Second, there's the solitary DeFi protocol architect, whose autonomous smart contracts attract billions in locked value. And third, the sovereign super creator, who leverages a monolithic personal brand and algorithmic distribution to sell highly profitable products to a massive, captive audience.
And we know for a fact these archetypes work because we've seen historic precursors and proxies pave the way. Think about Marcus Friend. He ran the dating platform Plenty of Fish entirely out of his apartment, generating over $10 million in pure profit annually without a single employee, before eventually selling it for over $500 million. Or look at Eric Barone, who literally hand-coded and generated hundreds of millions of dollars with the game Stardew Valley all by himself. Even a more modern proxy, like Midjourney, achieves staggering cultural relevance and revenue by aggressively leveraging the pre-existing infrastructure of Discord, completely bypassing the need to build and maintain their own complex web application.
Section 3, the ultimate human bottleneck.
Now, as amazing as all this sounds, this model is definitely not an invulnerable utopia. It comes with a massive, terrifying catch. In traditional corporate risk management, there is a morbidly useful metric called the bus factor. Basically, it asks a very simple question. How many key people need to be hit by a bus to totally destroy the company? Traditional corporations have staggered boards of directors, succession plans, and deep executive bench specifically to absorb this rather grim risk.
But for the solo unicorn, that bus factor is exactly 1. The key person risk is absolute. If the sole founder is incapacitated due to severe illness, a random accident, or even a sudden legal entanglement, the entire billion-dollar enterprise faces immediate, catastrophic collapse. Because even if the technical systems are running on autopilot, the overarching strategic direction, the management of the master API keys, and the authorization of massive financial transfers are entirely centralized in one single human being.
And honestly, beyond that absolute bus factor, this setup places a wildly unrelenting cognitive load on the founder. I mean, think about it. They have to simultaneously monitor global macroeconomic variables, manage highly aggressive automated cybersecurity threats, and navigate shifting international regulatory frameworks all at once. This immense pressure accelerates decision fatigue and severe psychological burnout. The human brain simply isn't biologically optimized to continuously process the real-time operational telemetry of a billion-dollar global infrastructure. Plus, there is a deep, precarious dependency on multi-trillion-dollar technological monopolies, like cloud hosts and AI providers. These giants could unilaterally deplatform the founder in an instant.
Which brings us to Section 4, Society's Macroeconomic Ripple Effects.
Let's zoom out a bit, because when you look through a wider lens, this whole trend builds into an undeniable macroeconomic challenge that affects literally all of us. Modern nation-states rely really heavily on traditional corporations as massive tax collection apparatuses, right? That's what funds the roads we drive on and the schools we use. But a geographically agnostic solo company with zero payroll completely hollows out that traditional tax base. This frictionless dynamic aggressively funnels winner-take-all wealth straight into the hands of a single digital oligarch, radically exacerbating global economic inequality.
And this dynamic points straight toward a brutal bifurcation of the labor market. As AI agents systematically displace traditional corporate hierarchies, the demand for standard white-collar middle management is going to structurally decline. At one extreme, you will have these highly leveraged apex orchestrators capturing massive margins. And at the exact opposite extreme, you'll see a massive influx of fractional gig workers. The traditional stable corporate career track will increasingly be stripped away, replaced by a fluid, decentralized marketplace of independent contractors who just orbit these highly profitable micro-enterprises, stepping in only for bespoke, contextual tasks that AI just can't quite handle yet.
The crazy thing is, the technology stack required to achieve this reality is already fully matured and actively deployed today. The historical barriers to entry have been absolutely obliterated, replaced by this infinite expanse of synthetic labor just waiting for a visionary architect to issue the command prompt. The Rubicon of operational leverage has officially been crossed, and the era of the sovereign micro-multinational is here. So, as we watch this monumental shift unfold, you really have to ask yourself, what is your trajectory in a world where a company's headcount shrinks to one? Where do you fit in?